right? Which is what is driving the global economy, right? And a lot of times Nigeria sits it out, not Nigeria, Africa, right? Sits it out and says, we don't need to be part of that. This is too far ahead for us. But by the time we now catch up, everybody else has built capabilities on top of those things, and they are the ones that are eating the cake, right? And selling us or exporting these solutions back to us, right? By that time, it's too late. Could you hear me?
You need the microphone.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Which one? This one. Okay. All right. So we have an illustrious panel of speakers that will be joining us today to deep dive into one of the most exciting and interesting endeavors that mankind has ever done in a commercial aspect, right? We've got blockchain, we've got virtual reality, we've got robotics, right? We've got, what's it called? What's the last one? Drone technology. And then we've got space. Usually people use the yardstick of rocket science as something that's hard. They say, oh no, we can't do that, that's rocket science, right? But rocket science has changed forever. The barriers to entry are lower than ever. It's part of something called new space, right? The commercialization, the privatization of the space race. And this has created the biggest opportunity for Africa to play its part for the very first time. So I'm just going to take you through really quickly for 5 minutes and then get the speakers on. Okay, so we spoke about technology adoption accelerating, right? So you can see from the 1900s all the way to 2005, you can see each of those technologies, the telephone, the car, electricity, radio, refrigerator, right? And how it was adopted, how long it took for US households to adopt it, right? Some of them took quite a while, right? Some of them 60 years, some of them hundreds of years. If you look at the later stage of the slide, you can see the internet, you can see computers, you can see cell phones. The adoption rate was super fast, right? So again, we're in a fascinating, exciting period that has never been before. Can the space race be the next big thing that will be adopted by the entire world? We have things like cheaper space flight, right? Which will allow space tourism so that it's not just astronauts that are going up. That's a major industry that's going to emerge, right? We have 3D printing. I don't know if some of you guys learned about 3D printing over the course of this week, right? It's basically manufacturing, right, of 3D products from nothing, right? It just depends on the material you're using. So some people are 3D printing houses, some people are 3D printing plastic materials, metal materials. So with space, you're going to be able to 3D print the things you need in space as you need them, right? Instead of having to carry them up using rockets, which is the most expensive part, right, of the space sector. And then obviously Mars, right? We're about to become an interplanetary species, right? We have SpaceX that is pushing all of the boundaries to get human beings to Mars for the very first time. A lot of us used to laugh, right? And in fact, actually, the space engineers at NASA and other places actually laughed at him, right? They're not laughing anymore. He's currently at the IAC, right? About to give a speech, I think today or tomorrow, right? In Australia right now on his plans for getting us there. Everybody is watching because they can see how serious he's been, right? So we're going to be going to Mars. And for some reason, I think that Nigerians will be a key part of that. You can't go anywhere and not have Nigerians. You know, I've gone to the remotest parts of some countries, and I didn't see any black person for like the first 3 days. I go to like a little bar, and all of a sudden I hear Igbo in the deepest recesses of that. We're everywhere, right? China, everywhere. So we're definitely going to Mars. But closer to the ground, the world has been changed by space. From water filters that save millions of lives in Africa, if we want to say, talk about the things that are key issues to us, right? To long-range communication systems, smoke detectors, even software, OpenStack software for the developers in the house, right? These are softwares that we rely on every day and were created because we were trying to get to the stars, and invariably it changed us on the ground, right? So New Space has opened up space exploration, and those are two key people who are driving that. Elon Musk for SpaceX, right? And Jeff Bezos from Amazon for Blue Orbit, right? So they're both billionaires who are just spending their money the way they like, right? And locally, what we've been trying to do, right, is to bring together different aspects, the different key stakeholders, right, locally, so that we can start to build out our own ecosystem, because that is important. You've just been hearing about ecosystems, right? The reason why you have hubs and investors and people like this is because they were brought together. And so this is why we have Space Apps Nigeria. And we started with 2 cities in 2014, and this year we have about 7. We're very inclusive. We try to bring together people from diverse cultures. We have a special part called Women Outside the Box, where we encourage the women to participate. The very first year, most of the women were followers, right? They would get in teams and just follow the men. But by the 3rd year, you can see over there, the winners, right, were a female-led team of engineers from Unilife. I won't go through this. These are some of the key players from the governmental agencies to universities and organizations. So we actually have some organizations and infrastructure even within Nigeria, right? So we can talk about space policy. We can talk about the key things that that really underpin space, right? And space policy is really just about dialogue, right? It's about bringing people together, bringing the different stakeholders together in a way that they understand what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do, right? After the 60s, right, with NASA versus, the US versus the Soviet Union, right? How many people know that we only have a space sector right now because those two countries were trying to outdo themselves, right? It was still the same thing then. People would have thought, why do we need to be in space? But then because they wanted, it was for pride, for national pride. We can't let the bad guys be in space and us not be in space, right? So they kept pushing the boundaries. Today, right, there's a little bit of that, but then because of the war ending, right, we now created space treaties, right? So space law is very, very important in just making sure that we keep those treaties and that everybody really understands where they play, right? And it's a peaceful proliferation of space exploration. That's the underpinning of all of these things, right? And so that's where the space policies come in. And space policies have impact across multiple areas, from innovation to how money is spent, to upskilling, to all of these things. Why this is important is because if you're a space-faring nation, right, that means that you have a space sector. One of the things that you do, the government does, is they try to ingrain the capabilities and the skill sets that they want to see, right down into the educational sector. So they create incentives like grants and other things, right, so that people would go into that area. So it really galvanizes the entire ecosystem and economy, right? And we'll talk about that in a second here. And so these are some common themes and guidelines for any new space actors. What that means is countries or organizations that want to start getting into space. Right? So the role of space in science and technology and innovation, which I just spoke about, within the education sector, applied science, technology leadership, innovation. The government's role in space activities, from frequency management of our spectrum and things like that, to licensing and things like that, to the relationship with the private sector, as well as how we cooperate with different countries like Brazil and UAE and others that are already spacefaring nations. So this is just to say that our opportunities lie in our institutional challenges. Yes, space seems so far. Virtual reality seems so far. Blockchain seems so far, right? But as we said, technology is only a tool. Technology is used to solve the pain points that are closest to you. That's all it is. Whether you're using AI and space to solve problems around agriculture and traffic, right? Or using it to solve something in a country like the US. It's two different pain points that they'll have. But either way, that is the reason for technology, to solve your closest pain point. So it's just as relevant here as in anywhere else. And we'll speak about that in a second. And so how do we need to do that? We need to provide access to tools, to data, to mentorship, foster experimentation, right? Fail fast, get this. These are things that you guys would know from the technology ecosystem, and the things that are important to drive that, whether it's e-commerce or it's Nollywood, right? And then we need to build out a long-term research infrastructure, right, within our universities and others, right? So thank you very much. I just wanted to give sort of a background, right? Because I know that a lot of people here are sort of enthusiastic about technology, about entrepreneurship, but there's so much more that we can be looking at for the next couple of years. And with that, I'd like to call up 3 of our speakers today. First off, I'd like to call Femi Arosane, who is the COO of IHS Towers. IHS Towers is a leading company that services the telco industry, especially around the cell towers, and they're looking into new technological areas like renewable, right? But Femi is also a passionate space enthusiast. He is an ISU International Space University alumni. So please welcome him. Thank you. Okay, next up, can we have Fumilayo Eri Folami? I know, I'm so bad at his name. Thank you very much. She is Scientific Officer at the African Regional Center for Space Science and Technology Education in English. Wow. She's also the national point of contact for the UN Space Generation Advisory Council and an ISU alumni. Last but not least, can we have Henry Ibitolu? He's an award-winning inventor and space mentor. He loves accelerating access to space tools for the bottom of the pyramid through 3D printing. He's also the membership manager for the Space Generation Council, and also part of the GE Fab Lab cohort of 2016. So welcome. Thank you very much, guys. So we've just seen the journey, right, of space, and why it's something that other countries are so interested in, right? But we want to hear from you guys, right, as to why this is really important as an endeavor, either for humankind, right, or for Africa. Can we have you first, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and I hope you are, as I am. Yes, why space? Because I'm glad, because this is what I do almost every time I go out. I talk about why space. And basically, it's because just as you're seated there, it's made your life so much better. I want to start with the phone, the smartphones we have to do. While I was coming here trying to check out where I have less traffic, I leverage them on the benefits of space, because I quickly check the map to say where do I have less traffic and which way to come onto the island. Those are like the benefits of space. Even up to the shoes we're wearing, you know. I'm sure a lot of you don't know how come we have a Velcro on some of these sport shoes. Actually, they were spin-off from space invention, so that when astronauts are there in space, the shoes don't just come off and start floating around the space station, and then we brought that down to Earth. And I can, if I want to start mentioning them one by one, oh my God, you're not going to like believe it. Another very critical aspect of it is in the health sector. I'm sure you don't know, a lot of people don't know how we came about this device that resuscitates heart, you know, when you check and all. They were all from space. And so basically, that's just the basic way to put it. It's made our lives way better and easier. And that's why for every country of the world, that's one major reason why they should be in space. So not every country is yet. That is the major reason. And right now, from what Shayet spoke about, initially when the space race started, it was during the Cold War. That's what we call the Cold War. It was basically for national pride, and they wanted the two giants just wanted to show off and say, yes, I can do this. You can threaten me. I can do this to you if you mess up. But now it's moved from there, way, way from there, and now it's about cooperation. And in fact, talking about cooperation, the most fantastic and wonderful thing that human can actually be in moving away from the Cold War session and saying, yes, it's now about cooperation, is what we call the International Space Station. As we speak, it's going round the Earth. And right now we have, I think, about 4 or 5 astronauts, carrying out researches and doing great stuff. Research on cancer right now, as we call, looking for ways also to help obesity and diabetes. This is one of the researches. And also another very fantastic one going on right now as we all are here on the ISS is how to improve food production on Earth. So like the growing plants, seeing the conditions and seeing how they can bring such things back to Earth. And so that's the ISS is that one thing.
Okay. Wow, wow. I mean, she really did hit the nail on the head. Like, if we sat here and listened to all of the innovations that have come just from that endeavor in space, we'll just look at everything we're wearing and just, see how it's related to space in some way, right? Femi, I just want you to sort of drill down further from, the global advantages, but then Africa. Why should Africa be looking at space?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a privilege to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I got excited when I got in and saw some of the interested in this discussion. Because the first thing is, space has not been properly communicated, or information has not been properly disseminated in this part of the world. How many of us are aware we have a space program in Nigeria? Okay, so there are 3 hands. So incidentally, Nigeria, some years back, precisely about 1993, at that point, became serious about having a space program. We were lucky to have a visionary leader like Obasanjo who came in 2001 and ensured that there was a space program inaugurated for the country. Pardon me, I'm not going to talk so much about Africa. I'm going to be very specific about Nigeria. If I want to put a figure to it, the space opportunity in Nigeria in terms of business and in terms of the ecosystem of value is sitting at about $50 billion annually. And that is $50 billion from assets on ground and assets in space that are practically hovering and looking down on us in Nigeria, which we are not even tapping into. I graduated some years back. But it's curious because I think a few months back, I was talking to some engineers, young graduates, and I was asking them about space, and they were like totally clueless about the fact that we could tap so much opportunity from space while we're here by ourselves. So the question was, why space? Is Nigeria trying to send an astronaut to space? If so, why? I think it's beyond that. So he has done a good job around explaining the opportunities, explaining the products, explaining how our lives have changed. And I'm just going to run through very quickly the kind of timeline in terms of what exactly we have done in Nigeria and the challenges we have with that. So like I mentioned, the space program was inaugurated in 2001, and that vested the National Space Council that is headed by the Vice President. It's under the purview of the Ministry of Science and Technology, and we have NASDA as the National Space Research and Development Agency. I guess we will talk a bit more about that because she's an insider from that system. And it touches on a few areas of our lives in Nigeria. It touches on basic space science, it touches on the education aspect of it, it touches agriculture, health, telemedicine, communication, that's a huge one, remote sensing, and the variety of satellites you can imagine. They created centers, and those centers had specific mandates. Some of them are focused 100% on harnessing the potentials of space for everyday use in Nigeria. Some of them are focused around how can we use communications and communication technology to enhance our lives and livelihoods in Nigeria. Some of them are even looking at how we can fix problems of natural disasters and agriculture. I think a few years back, we launched a set of satellites. 5 in particular, 5 satellites are in orbit today, or have been launched in orbit.
5 Nigerians.
5 Nigerian satellites specifically. We had the Nigerian Sat 1, Nigerian Sat 2, Nigerian Sat X, and then we had the NICOMSAT. Incidentally, there was a mishap on the NICOMSAT. Then another one was launched to replace it. Today, NICOMSAT cost Nigeria in dollar terms, in naira terms, as at the time it was launched, 180 billion naira. Annually, it's revenue 1 billion, less than 1 billion naira. The issue is that satellite has a lifespan of 15 years. We use 3 out of that. So even if we make a billion every year, naira, we have 12 years left. So that's 12 billion. And we invested 180 billion. The potential of this satellite is so amazing. What can we do with it? What can we not do with it? So the challenge of space in Nigeria and why we are at this level is because the awareness, number one, and the fixedness around the way the government has carried on the vision of the likes of Obasanjo, who believes that Nigeria should become a space-faring nation. Space has to be given from the private sector. The policy did not consider the fact that it has to be run as an enterprise. Everybody in this room, as a Nigerian, owes it to Nigeria to be part of that 50 billion. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. It is the age of information. It is the age of disruptive technologies. It is the age where we sit on our desks and disrupt things remotely in other parts of the world. Is what we are doing. Satellite has the skills to get us there. The challenge is, are we even seeing it? Do we understand that? That's the next big thing. It's going to change and it's going to transform every facet of our livelihood. If we really, hopefully through this discussion we're going to have today, decide to be part of that, it's very important that we know that it doesn't cost, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to be part of what is happening. You know why? Because if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. As I speak, I think Google, Facebook, they're going to be launching some satellites shortly from now. And those satellites are specifically tuned to harvest money from this part of the world. They are specifically going to be launched to address connectivity issues in Africa, in Nigeria in particular. And that's a shame. Those guys are sitting out there and they figured it out. And this is where the money is. And they're going to pick it. Subsequently, we talk also about how can we create the industry, the skills required, the education required in this part of the world. It would be interesting to know also, I guess we talked about that Nigeria has the best sweet spot to launch a space vehicle in the world. Please go and Google it. It's the best space spot you can ever build. It is here in Nigeria.
Is it in Lagos?
It is in Lagos. Here in Lagos. I will go into the room and we'll talk about that.
Okay, great, thank you. Henry, so you created Nigeria's first 3D printed telescope, right? So, I mean, you're sort of closer, I guess, to the audience in a way, right? As you're not necessarily somebody who has graduated from, say, a space organization like ISU, right? But you're an inventor, you're an engineer, you're somebody who is potentially even an entrepreneur, right? Who is passionate about space, right? Why are you passionate about space? Why a telescope as the 3D printed a proof of concept, right? And coincidentally, the reason for 3D printing this telescope is so that in displaced regions, right, with lots of kids who have no access to education because, they're in these camps. They can literally just get these machines, 3D print from the schematics needed, right, these telescopes, and be able to now learn using them. So this was, an amazing invention. But tell us, why space? Why were you interested in space?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start by saying why space, just like you said. Aside the fact that space has actually given us the opportunity, the tangible spin-offs from space, like she has said, I would like to talk about the intangible spin-off. Because normally, curiosity is one of the intangible spin-offs from space. Because we all know that curiosity for the unknown is what actually drives innovation. So, like you were asking me, why space? It was out of curiosity that led me into space, actually. Because while growing up, I was always fascinated about the stars and the night sky generally. So, and the first time I got to hold a telescope was during my internship. I was in my fourth year then. I was fortunate to do my internship in NASA. So that was the first time I would ever hold and look through a telescope. So it was really amazing looking at the night sky and actually seeing the Venus. We were able to see planet Venus then. So it was really amazing, and since then the curiosity is actually the drive that's been keeping me going. So now also coming to our age now, emerging technologies just like 3D printing, artificial intelligence, they are gradually changing our lives, and especially 3D printing, because it's more of hardware. You are a maker. So that was why I picked the idea to actually 3D print telescopes that young kids in underserved communities, in vulnerable communities, just like in the Northeast, can actually, if you bring emerging technology, 3D printer, design the telescope, model it, you can actually 3D print it and actually take it down there to where it's needed. Because I also believe for Africa to move forward, we need to empower the next generation, because our generation is gradually going, right, gradually aging out, but these young ones that are coming up, they are the future. Most likely, one of them it's during their generation will land on Mars. So why not start training them now for when the time comes? So that's
Amazing. I love what you said about curiosity, right? Because that is really what drives man, right? And that's what innovation is. A lot of these things, like the internet, like drones, like blogging, they started off as a curiosity. And the people who started them didn't know they were going to become multi-billion-dollar industries, right? We keep coming afterwards. But how about our own curiosity that's going to now become things that scale within and then get exported to other countries, right? We always find that issues that you have locally are also elsewhere. It's just not as close as a pain point to them as it is to you, right? So let's dive in a bit further, right? And try and look at the commercial aspect of things, right? We spoke about new space and how this new phase of space exploration has come about, led by the private sector, right? So NASA and the European Space Agency usually were the ones that would set the agenda and say, okay, we're going to the moon now, we're going to this, we're going to that, right? And so they look for, a couple of $1 billion from the budget to try and do that, right? But now you have individuals who have said, we're going to the moon, we're going to Mars, right? We don't need you guys, right? We'll tell you what we're doing, right? We need your permission, but we're doing it. And it's a commercial enterprise. It's going to make money, and it's going to make this country money. So let's look at Nigeria, right? Space applications. You mentioned satellite technology, right? And how we have a satellite that cost us hundreds of millions of naira, right? But meanwhile, the use of it is only gaining us a billion, is it dollars or naira? $1 billion naira every year. Meanwhile, if we were to, for the lifespan of the satellite, it would take another 14, we won't even make, back 1/10 of what it cost, right? But meanwhile, this satellite can be bringing us $50 billion, right? Closer, right? If it was used properly. So can we speak towards some of these space applications? Let's start with satellite technology. Anyone would like to take that?
I'm going to just give the background and then he'll go on from there. It's important the way it is in Nigeria now. Everybody needs to know that the private sector is what can really drive this space. I work in the government, so I know that. And all manner of analysis is being done, and we know. In those places you mentioned, yes, we started with the government making the right mixture, and over time, the government kind of gave it a bit to the private sector, making necessary policies, funding, and all of that. But in our case, please, we cannot look for the government. And there is money to be made, like it has been said. And I'm just going to mention a few, looking at the global economy, space economy. As at last year, the global space economy stood at $329 billion, and 38% of that was in the satellite communication and services arena. If you do the 3% of that billion, you know how much that is. And this takes all countries that use satellite communication, as we put it, including Africa and definitely including Nigeria. So multi-choice and what I mean, yes, all of that. So here now, for better internet services, communication, other mobile applications, maritime, or in aviation, yes, even in aviation, all of this come into part of that 38%. And there is another 38% that has to do with satellite infrastructure, ground systems, and yes, for Nigeria too, we can make money off that because we also have some ground systems, even for the media, some of their equipment and stuff like that is tied to it. So yes, and for the direct application, I've mentioned communication already, and also for us, agriculture is another huge part that really we can make money off. Shaya and I were at the International Space University just this past summer. I was an associate there, and the fact of the agricultural sector for Nigeria was one main aspect that we talked about. And please, I wouldn't want some person from outside to just come grab that part from us, because I got those questions and startups and who were interested in coming to Nigeria, and that was because I made mention that the government is saying, oh, we want to shift away from oil, people, let's go into agriculture. And really, in all developed times, the agricultural sector is really doing well because of satellite application, and we have that open up here in Nigeria. So I'm going to hand it over to him to talk about sector.
75% of, I think, our land is arable, right? In Nigeria, like, I was at the old railway station, I think, in Ebutemeta, and I was seeing all the pictures of our granite pyramids, before oil. Like, we had one of the best agricultural sectors in the world, right? I think we're going back there, and we're going to need space technology for that.
Okay, so there's a large group of families that say you cannot have an adult. They all start off on their entrepreneurs, their innovative people. You can only make money out of the issues and the problems in your place of the country. You cannot be making code or apps for fixing things like that in America or copying what they've done there. So just imagine, in the breadth of imagination, how much data is out there to be captured. Nigeria has a land space of 900,000 square kilometers. Companies from outside the country will do anything to pay for data about any part of Nigeria. Data is so precious. So, for example, in the agricultural space, there are initiatives that talks about marketplaces, creating value-added services for marketplaces. These are very remote locations. And in those remote locations, the only way they can communicate is to use an MTN or a Glo or maybe. Entrepreneurs that know if they bring apps to those places, they can empower and enable the local farmers. The previous minister for agriculture, traditional, he did a lot of work around this. He bought phones for almost 2 billion naira, and everybody was going to accusing him, wow, why did this man spend so much money buying handsets for farmers? He had a reason for doing that. Today, thanks to what he has done in that space, because of the recession, everybody has gone back to probably Nigeria. So we're producing stuff on the farm. Farmers can be rich now. People can talk to farmers. Imagine if for one, this same satellite that is revealing 1 billion annually, decided to go full enterprise. And people in this room developed apps to create marketplaces, to put small satellite dishes connected to this satellite in those rural locations, bring about farmers and cooperatives, and create an ecosystem of value there. There's so much that can be done to empower and enable those farmers. Today, the northeast of the country, 6 states in the northeast, is under lockdown because there's a military operation going on there. That's an internal defense issue. I was in Borno State last year. I'm going back next month. There's a lot of stuff happening there because we have multinational agencies, WHO, they're all there. Moving around in the hot sun there. The average Nigerian doesn't want to go there. They are there, they're communicating, and they're using communication devices. Some are using smartphones. Because most of the telecommunication towers in that space have been brought down by the insurgents. My company is currently reviewing about 173 towers in that space. They are doing a lot of social corporate responsibility activities there. There are about 6 million Nigerians that do not have access to communication services today because they are in IDP camps. There is a pent-up demand in those camps. If you put a communication service there, I am telling you, it will be soaked up immediately. There is so much that can be done. Today, they are not able to count how many people are in IDP camps because they are just moving to their house of the camp and getting clear from the day. There is no head count, no one checking. Still, in the next day, I am telling you, there are absolute things that will be done. Identity management projects that will be done, and we have other computer devices that will be placed there. Every computer device is there, and transformers are ISO. So we take the drones. The first people that drones are managed, high output layer drones are managed by satellites. The X-band, the KA band, they are classified satellites that the military, the US, is able to grab most of the drones. We are paying so much per day to rent those drones to be moving around that space. Imagine for one, we knocked out those drones with this satellite. I even have X-band and KA band. You can check online the specifications of the satellite, you can do that. Drone technology is huge in Nigeria. There are people that are currently doing drone mapping in Lagos. The roundabouts that are broken down in Lekki, they have to use drones. We drove it all the way to Benga to check the routes and realign the routes to cover the development. These drones will communicate with our satellites and not the satellites of God knows where. That's a lot of money being lost, and that is why this satellite is generating a billion a year instead of doing it 40 billion. It is not rocket science. I've talked about agriculture. About 12 years ago, when I was in the Commercial School University, and the Facebook project came up, we were given a task. And the task was to supposed to develop this to know about the SSP project. And essentially, somebody picked on malaria. And the question was, malaria is a scourge. They looked at this diseases that are tropical, and they were killing many people. Malaria ranked highest on the list. It was doing like 1 million people per, I don't remember whether it was per month or what per year, in the tropical region. And then the thesis was, how can we use satellite technology to create an early warning system for malaria mapping, to create risk maps, we use GIS, we have satellites that have sensors, conditions, we can look at humidity, temperature, we can measure everything. You know what? Today we have our satellites in Nigeria and we can measure all this stuff. And interestingly, after that project, two of my classmates, Anderson and Giovanni Otadevi, they went to Kenya and created a startup that actually activated that project. If you go online, it's called HISTAR, HISTAR. It's a huge document created. If you're going to read about it, it looked at the ecosystem and it talks extensively about how we can use satellites to create an early warning system for disease outbreaks and epidemics. Today we're talking about meningitis, we're talking about malaria, it's still there. I have friends that are seriously working in Northeast distributing vaccines, polio vaccines, and also vaccines. Because in IDP camp, they're breathing like rats. You have a child born like everybody else. So there's a big prevalence of diseases. These are Nigerians like you and me. There's a big problem out there, and I'm telling you, it can be fixed. It can be fixed because we have technologies here that can fix it. Telemedicine, the health system. It may just be also that we know that we have a space command, where the part of our agency. That space command is supposed to be like the command that looks at different to internet attention and aggression. Do you know we really use satellites to monitor the activities of dissidents on the ground? In Darfur, in southern Sudan, when there was a serious crisis and genocide was at its peak, two Americans, one of them I think was the student, they actually paid for a satellite to be zoomed in on Darfur to check the crimes that were committed against humanity there. Our satellites have resolutions of 5 meters. I'm not discussing before we got in, that we advance the resolution of the satellite. We can practically read the great numbers of cars on the ground. These are satellites that are specifically tuned to check the incidences of insurgents and everything that's to do with movement of arms across borders and civil population control. There's so much that can be done. It is endless. What are we doing? We are complaining about the government, but like I said, the problem has to do with the fixedness, structural fixedness, and functional fixedness of the government when they created the space program and the space policy. It was meant to be driven in the private sector. It belongs to the private sector. It is left to you and me to capitalize on this opportunity. So there's a need and depends on demand. If only you will unlock it in the next telecom generation. It's like when you subject to Nigeria, it doesn't require rocket science.
This is exactly what we need, because I feel like the more we talk about it, right, the more, as you said, the next generation of people, sometimes it takes one person and their doggedness to solve and use a specific technology to actually open it up for everybody else, right? And we really, really hope to see that. Now, Henry, so we had there's something called a CubeSat, right? Which is a small version of the satellites that we're all used to seeing in the movies, right? Coincidentally, when we talk about the barriers to entry lowering, right, in the space sector, right, it's really around things like satellites. Satellites used to cost about $200 million to create. Today, we can create one for less than $200,000, right? And it's coming down fast, mostly because of something called CubeSats, right? Now, we actually were part of 5 countries that sent up a CubeSat, right, to space, and is currently orbiting the planet. I think Ghana as well as Nigeria and a few other. And these were not built by government. This is not one of the 5 that was built by government. These were built by citizen engineers, some who have been at NASDRA, and who worked out of a Japanese university, right? As well as in partnership with FUTA, right? Now, how do you see these kinds of programs, right? Which is university education, right? Being able to drive more of the kind of things that he's talking about, right? The innovations in satellite technology, right? How can we leverage programs like GE Garage, right? Which is an innovation lab around 3D printing, right? Things like the program in Japan, right? That sent out the CubeSats. How do we leverage these, in your opinion, to get to the endpoint that he's talking about?
Yeah, in my own opinion, I think, like, I'm well aware of that. We have an already existing ecosystem in Nigeria, and that's basically the tech ecosystem. And we have programmers, scientists, and robotics engineers that are already working on some of these educational stuff. So to leverage on the university and space agency partnership, I believe more programs need to be activated. More programs such as labs working in partnership with private sector who are working to open up more incubation labs in Nigeria. So for that, I think having these kinds of graduates, having graduates that are coming out from engineering graduates, computer scientists, and the other courses, I think as soon as these graduates are coming out, as soon as they are finishing their education, they need to get them together, like the brightest of them, the brightest graduates need to be brought together, and just like in partnership with the private sector, which is the GE Garage, having something like that in multiple states, I think it's going to drive this kind of innovation.
Okay. So just in addition to that, you're actually the membership manager, right, for the Space Generation Advisory Council, which is a UN initiative for youngsters that are interested in space, right? How, I mean, that is a major organization that can drive some of these things. How can people be a part of that?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So the Space Generation Advisory Council is a youth-led non-profit organization that is in support of the UN program on space application. It's a global organization of more than 10,000 members, and it's mainly the aim of SJC is to stand as a representative of students, young professionals to some of these big government agencies. So SGAC is like we have the students based and young professionals. So like in Nigeria, we have a couple of about 300 Nigerians that are members from the SGAC. So to actually joining these kinds of organizations, because I've been a member since 2013. That was when I was interning in NASA. So joining these kinds of organizations would actually, because in SGAC we also have what we call the project groups. There are several kinds of project groups whereby students can join and collaborate and work on projects that might lead to something tangible. So if you would like to join, I would like to like inform us that if you'd like to join the SGAC, just log on to www.spacegeneration.org. Spacegeneration.org is a global organization whereby you can, within the project groups, you'll be able to learn from some of with your fellow students who are not Nigerians, who are not Africans, but who have the expertise, they have the experience, whereby because like within my project group, most times whenever we're having the meetings, coming from Africa with little experience in these kinds of issues, most times I always like keep quiet and listen to what they are saying. They have the experience, you are there to learn. So if you join the Space Generation Advisory Council, you'll be able to learn, and that I believe would actually help drive this kind of innovation that we are known for.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would like to add to what you said about the education. So for those who are interested in participating in this education, there is a kind of age group, so between 18 and 35 years. So you're beyond 35, you can join. Yeah. And then the other thing is just adding to the working groups of SGAC. So the idea is those working groups, the topics they address are like trending issues in the world. So for example, if security is a trending issue, they have the working group, and so everybody from different your contribution, and then do it during the UN meeting. Because the UN meeting certain times of the year, the report of all the projects and then presented there. And that is so we call education as the voice of the youth, the voice of the young people on space matters around the world to the global agencies, the governments and things like that. So it's a great platform.
Wow. Wow. And from any university, from any background, as long as they're interested. Great.
As long as you are interested in something space, yes, you don't have to even necessarily be a student. A young professional, you could be a programmer, you could be someone in the business development area, whatever.
You could be a banker.
Within that age range,
Yeah.
you can lend your voice to, and yeah, everybody's there to listen. Because one thing, the reason I'm emphasizing on this is like you lending your voice. That's one mistake we make at times. Like, oh yeah, there's nothing I can. So in my interaction over and over with people from all parts of the world, when we need to work on projects, I realize that as long as I can identify with a project, I don't get carried away with, oh yeah, it works in the US. As we are talking about it, I am thinking of which of those things fit into my own system back in Nigeria. Fine, I may not be happy with the way things are in Nigeria, but I love Nigeria and I really want things to work here. So when we're talking on projects, I'm already thinking of how this fits into Nigeria. And when I want to contribute, I bring in the Nigerian and the African perspective. In fact, they do make mistakes. Okay? For example, we were talking about the mosquitoes out of Spain. And I remember when we were trying to turn on what was a certain project in an ISP. And this guy kept saying, oh, in Africa they have serious problem with a particular plant, in fact, it's killing us. Like, holy crap. That is not correct. That is not the problem we have in Africa. In fact, that crop issue you're talking about is only affecting the section of the country, and it was just Ethiopia that plant was affected. And in fact, a certain region, like a community in Ethiopia. So I said, no, I am African. I know what the issues are in Africa, and I know this is what we should focus on. And this is also relevant to you guys. I started mentioning, and they're like, oh, yeah, and we benefited.
Exactly. Exactly.
So please, you welcome as long as you do that.
So what I really like about that is that Africa's voice, right, is usually left out. And what that means is that when they're considering all the issues to actually fight, right, globally, nobody's even put ours forward for them to consider, right? And what they actually find is that when we put our own forward, they also have similar issues. It's relevant to them as well. So we need to have a voice, in the global sphere more and more. So just lastly, we're going to go back to something that Femi, you had mentioned at the beginning, right? Do we know that Nigeria has one of the most amazing sites, right, for launching rockets? So you have countries all over the world that choose a specific part of the space sector value chain to play in, right? Whether they're building the satellites, right, or they're launching the satellites. So if I'm launching satellites, I would launch it on behalf of other countries that have built their own satellites but don't have the ability to launch themselves. That's a lot of money as well, right? So Nigeria uses, I think, Belarus and a couple of other places that have Ukraine that have launched for us, right? But Nigeria has a perfect sweet spot for launching. Not every country has that, right? It's the same characteristics that actually make the John F. Kennedy Center perfect. Also, the European Space Agency's launch site perfect, and we have that as well. I think that puts some responsibility on us. But I wanted you to sort of speak towards that a little bit more.
in the first, second stage of the rocket leaving the Earth, we got enough fuel to power maybe 9 million homes. And that's a lot of fuel. That's not still an hydrogen that you're burning there. So Nigeria is not of the equation. Look at it. That's where we geographically placed. It costs less fuel based on our location to launch a spacecraft, and you can even launch heavier payloads from here. So that makes it quite interesting and interesting. But you see, there's a challenge. The challenge of number one, there are countries around us, our neighbors, who we have to have a very clear understanding and policy with around how to handle issues of disaster management, issues of field launch, and all that. Because often and not launches fail and fall into the water. So are we able to contain if, for example, something goes wrong? Two, do we have the kind of skill set and infrastructure required to support that kind of structure there? Three, is there a willingness on the part of the government to capitalize on this? The Russian Republic, when it fell down, part of the country there was Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan then was one of the many places that the Russians kept their missile silos. So they had to close down those missile silos. Interestingly, the Americans were very quick and sharp. They realized that they could create a launch service, an outsourced launch service from Kazakhstan. And we have the Baikonur Cosmodrome, exactly. So the Baikonur Cosmodrome became a taxi service for the American space program. So they had to shut down the shuttle service. And went there, anything that goes to the International Space Station, the easiest place to go from is Kazakhstan, because they commercialized that spaceport. The commercialization of the Nigerian spaceport requires a lot of will and effort on the part of the government. There's a lot of disruption that has happened. Elon Musk and the other guys, the Bezos, the Blue Origin, and SpaceX, they disrupted the space transport business. And they created a reusable launch vehicle. It was out of necessity that all these things came up. We are here, we are very well placed geographically, we are very well placed around the equator. Every indices is in our favor. All we need to do is to have that will. And to have that will, we need to start with the message to all of us here that first of all, we have the skill set required to make this happen. We do not need to go and shop for engineers, scientists to make it happen. Incidentally, we have a propulsion research center here in the West, in Lagos. So just telling me,
So you said propulsion, jet propulsion.
One of them is satellite development, another is rocket propulsion, and that's the one in the bed. There's another one in education, and all of that spread around the country. And in fact, we have a major one on remote sensing GIS. So for those, I still want to keep that in. Those people who also may be interested in, have remote sensing related application and things like that for all some of the things you mentioned. Yes, we can actually collaborate with some of the in-house people there. They're actually well skilled in helping things like that. And so talking about the spaceport, I was really glad when you mentioned the problem about having something left and right. So usually when you want to launch, when you're launching a rocket, you go with the best location. So you go west. And if you look at the map of Africa, and when you get you have countries from both sides actually. So yes, we have a lot of for launch, people, and all of that. We have to work in that direction in the country. And myself and my colleagues actually use like the space engineer. We do hold interesting discussions, and coincidentally we were talking about this that where I was telling him my center and the repair center is where we've been working on efficient working flow because the defect was actually in the first. Interesting. Nigerians, good. We don't get so much funding, okay, but we have passionate people, and that But then the meeting is there. So really two things that we should take out as well. We have all the things we know. So in their head, they can create tests on things, they use these things themselves and calibrations and things like that. And in fact, I was telling him, we got to the stage where we were trying to collaborate with the Department of Chemistry to work on the chemical composition of some of the local things we can use as well and all of that. And then stuff happened and we have to shut that down. So, but even though they need to go through a lot of legal policy things, sorting out issues with our neighbors, okay, we want to do this and all. And then we both felt, how about Kenya? Now, the space race is not just about me, it's about cooperation. And as long as it's about you do something, you do something different, everybody's happy. So like Kenya doesn't have that kind of structure. And we can say, okay, you know what? How about you use that space? It's not your, they don't have this space act for this and what kind of thing. Not what you want to do. And we look at what the government focus is, and that's exactly not me. But Nigeria, we have part of that capability, and we say, oh yes, we can use the space for that. Then we can have this kind of bilateral cooperation and do that. It's a possible choice for us. But still, we are not going anything away. Everything we need to develop, we still have in our own way. And then we can delve into other things. Like you also notice we don't have an integration of funding, like we don't have something like that here. Those are things that yes we can, and then we then start building stuff. We carve a niche. I was discussing with them and we all in that called Alvin son, one of the people who landed on the boat. Yeah. And when we were talking about Africa and Nigeria, and I was having something, I said this man has a kind of African spirit. He said, it's not just about going out there and say, yeah, we do space, but no, what is your need? You don't have to use anything. You can't do it. So if ours, and Nigeria is really blessed, there was a study that was done and we can categorize it. One of the countries that I think within Africa, trying to check out the resources that are in Africa, it was identified Nigeria has a huge human resource. Yeah. And for any endeavor, it's a basic and one of the most important things. So we have that, we leverage on that. We have very brilliant, creative people, innovative people. Yeah. So we come up with solutions and that we can, like you mentioned, I love the word you use. Apart from just solving things in here, we export it out. And then those other parts of the world look towards Nigeria
for that specialty.
They have solutions for this. They have wonderful people who create this. And if they have problems, then they can just throw it to you because also the world is a global thing. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to say, oh yeah, this thing has to be done here. No, they outsource things. So like you already have a niche and they know it's just great human resources, people get efficient, they can deliver. Okay, if they have an issue, they need to develop something, they throw it here and then no money for us.
That's actually the Andela model. I don't know if how many people know Andela, right? So literally, Mark Zuckerberg, who's invested in Andela, his first investment from his company, literally are making a bet on Nigerians being so intelligent that they can help build programs on behalf of companies all over the world, right? That's what Andela does. And we really have that, right? We have that knowledge economy potential. So just really quickly.
Actually got into discussion with the government of Ukraine, in the world, to have this space force developed in Nigeria. Wow. I think the targeting from here to the future by then, I have a lot of say there. It's about, I think, 20 people there. But truth be told, if you don't, not if you don't do it, somebody else will come and do it. The opportunity is amazing. The world will not wait. Again, when the fourth industrial revolution, and the disruption problem finding bikes out there and getting on the street, take this job to everybody. Nobody will come and take Panadol for our headache care. It is only us that will fix it. Imagine for a moment that there was a space force in Nigeria. Imagine how many engineers will be struggling to graduate, to fill the human capital requirements for that. Imagine how much foreign exchange. Imagine how high-tech the industry would have been. Imagine the kind of ecosystem that was created around that. When you go to a spaceport, it's like a whole country of its own. It's a whole community. If you want to go to watch a space launch in Kuru, it costs you about $2,500 for 2 weeks stay in the bush, with mosquitoes and everything, just to watch that affection.
Wow.
You want to go to space launch just to walk around the platform. It costs you money. Cape Canaveral in Florida, it's a tourist attraction. Even if they don't launch rockets from there, just imagine the industry around that. I told you there's 50 billion worth of money to be picked up. It's a choice. We can continue to blame the government, or we can start to think about the problem and how to fix them. It is not far-fetched. It starts from us paying the capability. But again, there's the part of the government that needs to change the system about how they think. It is the public-private sector engagement that can fix this thing. And I think the next thing we will get is in the
Hallelujah. So on that note, thank you so much to this amazing... Guys, I have to say that you're part of a very select group of people, actually, that this kind of panel has not been put together anywhere in Nigeria before, and discussing these kind of things. So this is very, very unique, and we want you to take the gospel out there, tell as many more people as possible, and then you yourselves have to see that you can be the next space entrepreneurs. Okay? You're not left out. Thank you very much. Sorry, we don't have time for questions, unfortunately, because we have the next session. We kind of overrunning, I know. But please meet any of the speakers as they go out. Thank you so much, guys, for staying with us and hearing. Thank you.